This is absolutely unprecedented. First of all, of course, viewer, a very warm welcome to India Matters on Friday. And for the second night in a row, we're leading with a story about an Indian origin politician who has won one step towards a mayoral seat in New York City, who has completely dominated the internet and political landscape between India and the United States. You may not think it's much, but it is what everyone is talking about, and I do have a few things to say. So there's this full-blown meltdown over Zohran Mamdani's win in the New York City mayoral primaries. But let's be honest, the irony isn't that Meera Nair's son's views are shocking or that he's some sort of new age radical. He's a predictable byproduct, and I'm going to explain that to you. A politician grown in the soil of woke grievance politics, fertilized by performative outrage and conveniently watered by the hysteria of Trump's MAGA right. He exists. Zohran Mamdani exists because the extremes of American politics need each other to survive. That's right, Trump and Zohran need each other. So no, the real surprise isn't Mamdani or the usual amounts of attention being paid to him. And once again, I accept the irony that here in India, I'm leading with this otherwise obscure politician for the second night in a row. It's the mirror that Zohran Mamdani has accidentally held up to the hypocrisies of the global left, the very ideological class he represents, that is in question tonight. Here's a man who deletes his tweets, sanitizes his feed, projects selective victimhood, weaponizes identity, and still manages to politically succeed. It's actually incredible and should be studied closely. Now, that's not scandalous, actually, if you consider that the other extreme of American politics willfully feeds this in order to justify its own existence. Trump and Zohran need each other. Now, that's textbook left-wing politics, however, in 2025. What is fascinating is how quickly the same people who lecture the world about justice, pluralism, about free speech are willing to look exactly the other way as long as their side is projected as standing for justice and actually winning elections. The same progressives in America who scream censorship under Elon Musk are completely silent when Zohran Mamdani plunges or purges his history. The same activists who rage against Hindutva fascism cheer on a man who simplifies India into a caricature of Muslim oppression. Never mind the facts, never mind nuance, because nuance doesn't trend, it doesn't get traction, especially in an election in the United States. It won't stand out from the crowd of insular and inward-looking folks in Trump's America. And let's not even pretend that this is just about New York City. It's about the global left's larger project, one that's more comfortable with externalizing its battles. India becomes a punching bag, Muslims in India become a rhetorical device, Modi becomes the mascot of everything wrong in the world, while the horrors of Hamas, the duplicity of Pakistan, or the erasure of Jews from progressive movements are all politely omitted. Now, this is not to say that the core of many of the things that Zohran Mamdani stands for are not worth debating. They indubitably are. I'm not even going to get into the tragic state of India's so-called left in the context of the Zohran Mamdani political victory, because they've devoted the last 24 hours to attacking me for calling them out on my show last night. If you don't believe me, go look at my social media handles. But more seriously, Zohran Mamdani isn't the outlier here tonight. He's the logical outcome of this selective morality, this global hypocrisy of the left. And if you're looking for irony, it's in the silence of the global progressives who scream at every imagined fascist shadow in India while voting for someone who distorts India for political capital, has no problems in peddling a starkly Pakistan-colored worldview of Hindus and Indians in general. And that's the point. Mamdani is a man of Indian origin, and here I am tonight devoting my second show in a row this week to this viral politician. But this isn't about India. It never was about India. It's about what sells in the American political theater. Mamdani needs Trump. Trump needs a Mamdani. So no, I am not shocked, and I hope you aren't either. And neither should you be by the things Mamdani is having quoted as said. We should in fact be a little amused tonight, amused at a global left that keeps shouting about truth to power, but only when it's convenient, only when the facts match the vibe, and only when the villain has already been cast. And it doesn't, if it doesn't, social media posts can always be deleted. And joining me tonight is Indu Vishwanathan. She is a scholar and an educator based in New York City who describes herself as a lifelong liberal New Yorker. She's live with me tonight. Welcome, Indu. Good to see you. Because her pained essay-length social media post on X has been widely read and shared. Indu, welcome. I'd like to start first by quoting from that first paragraph of your piece, and I encourage people to go read it. Don't tell me what Zohran Mamdani's victory means for me as a South Asian New Yorker. I'm a lifelong liberal New Yorker, and that's why I'm finding it so frustrating to see the gleeful, starry-eyed glorification of Zohran Mamdani. Indu, I'm going to kick this off by asking you to explain that first paragraph, your frustration. Tell us about it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And I really appreciate how clearly and crisply you've described the experience of being a progressive American right now. The don't tell me part is the very New York part. New Yorkers don't like to be told what to do. New York is very different, I think, than much of the rest of the country. We don't really, as I articulate in my essay length tweet, we don't really take BS. And I'm not going to be told what to think. And I'm certainly not going to be used or utilized in identity politics when it comes to the New York City mayoral elections. It just doesn't fly with me. So part of it is just simply not permitting anyone to tell me what this means for me. The second part is I stand by Dr. King's words that we should not be judged by the color of our skin, but the content of our character. And I'm holding Mamdani to that standard, and he's not passing.
Was there one particular moment, Indu, when you knew you couldn't stay quiet about Mamdani anymore?
I think it was an interesting week in New York. We had record heat, which absolutely impacted voter turnout. I think only 9% of registered Democrats actually voted. And so this combination of heat, which obviously impacts how we're thinking about things, and just the glee that I saw from, I have, not only am I a lifelong New Yorker, I've worked in public education, I've taught in New York City public schools. So I'm really connected to the ground, to the roots of this city. And to see people that I have known for decades who authentically support and are interested in uplifting the people who are left behind in New York, which I obviously stand by as well, to see them completely mesmerized by this charlatan, frankly, it was really disheartening, and I just couldn't not say anything anymore. As a New Yorker, this is hitting my city now, and it means something very specific when it hits your city.
How has your identity as a liberal New Yorker clashed, with the very overt identity politics now apparently weaponized by figures like Mamdani, Indu?
Yeah, absolutely. I became a public teacher in New York during 9/11. I was in grad school in 9/11, and I saw what happened to conversations around inclusion and diversity. And over the decades, it's become reduced. It's become incredibly reduced and simplified into memes. Social media doesn't help. And so what used to be a space of we should not be judged by the content of our character has now completely flipped around. And now you are judged by your eye. We should be judged by the content of our character has been flipped around to the color of our skin, but the color of the skin has changed. Right. And so identity politics now is about how do you look, what identities do you claim, and therefore are you a good person and agreeing with this very, very small tent of very maximalist positions where you're not allowed to question anything. And to me, being a liberal and being a New Yorker means we question everything. You're allowed to question things. And the fact that you're not allowed to question anything, to me, belies what the party stands for.
And one of the reasons why your post has been so widely shared, I imagine, Indu, is because because your view of Mamdani is not the usual things that people are saying. You know, his views on Hindus, or some of the more extreme and polarizing views when it comes to Muslims and religion and Modi and India. You've taken a very a very nuanced view, which you yourself say as a liberal New Yorker, which is why I'd like to also ask you, would you still, as a liberal New Yorker, vote for a candidate, who tells the truth even if they don't fit an ideological box? And the reason I ask that is because this is a shape-shifting story. We've seen people who don't necessarily agree with someone like a Mamdani go out and vote for him.
I would look at the entirety of whoever it is that's campaigning, whoever what it is that they're saying. But certainly, the past decade I have matured, and I think things have really shifted in politics in America and now New York. So I would absolutely go by investigating, seeing who's open to question, who's open to viewpoint diversity, because this moral grandstanding that's taken over the left, I think, which ironically used to be the critique of the right from the left, and now we've absorbed it ourselves. I think a lot of us here on this side of the aisle in New York and broadly in the United States, we're tired of it. So the same critiques that you've levied against the left are happening internally as well. Maybe not as memeable, because they are nuanced, right? One of the critiques I've gotten on my tweet is that it is essay length. Like, learn to keep it short, woman. And you can't actually do nuance in a meme length tweet. Yeah. So, but I think those conversations are happening, and we refuse to let our party be taken over by this.
Do you think the media there has lost its ability to call out performers, when they check the right identity boxes? There's a lot of talk about that as well.
I think there's a lot of fear of cancellation that's happening, right? Cancel culture has hit media itself. But I think there are some independent journalists, and those are the people we turn to, people who are not answering to, whatever board or whatever other larger project or agenda is sitting beneath. And those independent journalists are in it, in as much as they're independent scholars, independent public servants, I think those are the spaces that we turn to.
How do you process, last couple of questions, Indu, and I do want to get to the heart of it because this is important, and everyone's talking about Mamdani. How do you process the fact, that this sort of performative politics now seems to matter more than integrity and facts? That seems to be very true in this case.
And I think how do I process it is I obviously have no tolerance for it. Look at my tweets. And I think there are I talk to my neighbors, I talk to people I know in real life, and I think there is very little tolerance for it. People do question this. And of course, those are not necessarily the people who are online, but those are the people who are going to vote.
Final question, do you feel, and I know this wasn't part of what you were saying, but do you feel Hindu Americans are being boxed into, a guilty until woke framework in the American political discourse?
I think that is certainly a trend in far left American politics, bearing in mind, of course, the America's center right. So our left politics are not as left as India, which is center left. I think it's absolutely happening, and I think people have grown weary of it. They're tired of it. So I think it's reaching its end. My hope is that Mamdani actually signals the end of this trend, that he's such a caricature of a projection of how extreme it's become, and that people kind of call uncle and say enough.
Indu Vishwanathan, this was great. Thank you very much for your time and being with me here on NDTV. Hope to see more of you here. It's great to have a voice that is in the city. I've been doing this story 2 nights in a row, and lots of people are wondering why me all the way here in India. I'm devoting a primetime show to Zohran Mamdani 2 nights in a row, but it was good to have a nuanced perspective like yours. Indu, grateful. Thank you very much for being with me.
Thanks so much.